we are now thrilled to be joined by a very special guest. He is having a pretty decent season. His name is Jacob Wilson of the A's. Jacob, welcome to Baseball Barbercast.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
So there are a lot of different places we could begin with you. You're having, like Jordan said, a phenomenal rookie season, a very unique rookie season. I want to begin with your stance. I know you get a lot of questions about this. You're pretty active in the batter's box. I went back and looked at some video of you from the Northwoods from college, and it seems like you've gotten almost noisier over time. Can you kind of explain how that's been the case?
Yeah, I've kind of always been that twitchy athlete ever since I was a kid. I've always kind of been moving the box ever since I was, very young. That's kind of something my dad always taught me. I kind of learned that the more movement I had, it was better for me in the box, face these pitches. I was never a good athlete that could just stand still and be explosive. I always had to kind of move in rhythm and being, it's all kind of timing based, rhythm goes into the timing and then timing goes into the swing. And it's not something I've always been doing, like I said, since I was a kid. And, as you kind of develop and go from high school to college to pro ball, the pitches just keep getting better and better. So I think that, over time, it always kind of started to get a little bit faster and faster because I kind of just had to, be more in rhythm to face these guys on a daily basis. So I think it's gotten faster and it's always just been a twitchy swing.
And are you doing drill work with that type of movement? Like when you do tee stuff or you do flips?
It's still twitchy, but it's not as fast. When I'm in the cage, like it's kind of just feeling out the swing and feeling out the stance. But in game is definitely when it's at its fastest for sure.
I think what I'm curious about, you mentioned that development and the pitchers getting better and better, and that may be impacting your move in the box. I'm also curious about kind of the timing of your development because your high school senior year was 2020, and that, of course, I'm sure complicated things as you transition into college and not having that full senior season. But, the strikeouts and that's it. Oh, he hasn't struck out and all these things. Like that seems to have only gotten better as you've gone up different levels. You struck out more than you walked as a freshman at Grand Canyon, but then obviously since then it has been a lot more extreme towards making as much contact as basically anyone else in baseball. Yeah. So when did you kind of realize you had that knack of putting the bat on the ball?
Yeah, it definitely goes back to kind of high school. I definitely never liked striking out. That's just something my dad built into me. He didn't like striking out, so for me, it was always, put the ball in play, good things can happen. Defense makes an error, or like a 2-strike swinging bunt, whatever happens. But, any way to find a way on base was kind of my dad's main kind of lesson to me growing up, was just put the ball in play and, good things can happen for your team. So going into my freshman year, obviously, like you said, struck out a little bit more than I wanted to. And kind of really worked on a 2-strike approach that year. I think in high school, you don't really have to have a crazy 2-strike approach because you're not really facing too many arms that are crazy overpowering. But once you get to college, it starts getting a little bit harder. So after my freshman year, I really built in a 2-strike approach and just kind of building the mentality of like, I'm going to go out there and this guy's not striking me out. I'm going to do whatever I can for this guy not to strike me out, fouling off his best pitches and just waiting for them to make a mistake. So, for me, it's always been kind of a mindset and on top of an approach-based 2-strike thing to really just put the ball in play. And, like I said, that's kind of the main lesson my dad taught me growing up: put the ball in play and good things can happen.
So you say that growing up, you didn't like to strike out. Do your strikeouts, because you have so few of them, stick in your brain? Like I went back and watched today the 5 strikeouts you had your junior year. Do you remember those moments almost as much as you remember the doubles and the home runs?
Yeah, I talk about those 5 strikeouts. I think I remember all 5 from that junior year of college. It definitely, it stings a lot when you strike out as a hitter, but then on top of that, when you're known for not striking out, I think it kind of hurts a little bit more, to me. But you can't let that affect your next at bat. If you strike out the first at bat of the game, you still got 3-4 more at bats. So I try to let it go as quick as possible. But for some time, it definitely does sting. But I try to throw it away real quick.
And I would imagine when that happens, I have all the videos up in front of me. You strike out against Texas State, and I imagine the entire opposing dugout is just hooting and hollering as you're walking back to the dugout, right? It's a little bit louder.
I remember some dugouts to get pretty loud when I struck out. I was just like, oh well, you just gotta tip your cap. Pitchers make good pitches, so tip your
Yep.
cap and try to get him next at bat.
Bro, they don't boo nobodies, you know?
I'm curious because you're still striking out at a rate lower than almost anyone else in the major leagues, but of course it's more than 5. As those pitchers, of course, you're still having plenty of success, but this feels a little unfair to stick on the strikeouts here, but I'm curious your perspective because it happens so infrequently. I'm curious, like at this level, when you're in college, sometimes you might get rung up on a bad pitch. Maybe you swing and miss here and there, but for the most part, a lot of your strikeouts might be having to do with some umpiring more. Whereas in the big leagues, you're going to have situations where, as you just said, like a good pitch is a good pitch. At the highest level, what are the good pitches that are so much better than you've really ever seen before? Again, clearly you're still having a lot of success, but what are some of the pitches that you've seen at the major league level that are just like different? I know you just faced Tarek Skubal. That's a good example, but who are some pitches or specific kinds of pitches that stand out at the highest level?
Yeah, I think kind of all of them in a sense. Every pitcher kind of has their go-to pitch that they have, whether they have a really good vert fastball or they have a really good slider that breaks later, a changeup, whatever it may be. But I think the main thing kind of in the big leagues is that pitchers will make their pitches look like strikes longer, and then at the last second they'll end up being balls. So I think that's kind of the hardest thing you have to learn, when you first get here is just looking for these pitches. I think they tunnel them very well. In the minor leagues, balls usually you can see balls out of the hand, and here they'll throw pitches that look like a slider down away for a strike, and then they'll break off 3 feet. And it's just a good pitch. Yesterday we faced Skubal, and you kind of go out there, you're like, all right, you just gotta battle this guy. Try to foul off his best pitches and wait for something in the zone. And like you said, he's kind of been unbelievable these past 2 years, and it's definitely a tough at bat for sure. But like I said, you just go up there and you really just try to battle him off. I think yesterday I swung a changeup that I almost bounced, and I somehow just barely nicked it. And you kind of just like, all right, got lucky there. You gotta lock in more against those guys, especially when you go up against those Cy Young winners.
And I think that's something fans don't totally understand all the time is like so much of pitching in the big leagues is making balls look like strikes and making strikes look like balls. Like you had I think it was against Zach Wheeler, right? You had like that front hip slider that looked like a ball for 25 minutes until the very last second.
And it comes
right?
in, last second. Yeah, and so like those are the pitches that it's hard to lay off. There's the ones that look like balls forever and then look like strikes, and the ones that look like strikes forever and end up being balls.
So then, like, for you, someone who's swinging more often than a lot of players, what would you define as a good pitch to hit?
Yeah, I think honestly for me, I just go up there and I just kind of look for a strike in the heart of the zone. I know that with me, I don't have the power to hit a homer right or hit a homer center. Like for me, it's looking for something I could drive left center and over down the left field line. So a good pitch for me would be just be going up there looking for something in the heart of the zone and just being on time to hit it. And these guys don't make mistakes too often, but you definitely everybody's human, so you just gotta look for those mistakes that they leave in the middle of the plate here and there.
And I think it's clear you understand your strengths. And it is interesting because, I've had conversations with guys like Stephen Kwan about this, where, having this ability to put the bat on the ball is, of course, a gift, but sometimes it kind of puts you in positions where maybe you might get yourself out because you're able to put the bat on balls that maybe you aren't necessarily going to. So how have you kind of struck that balance so far? As I said many times, like you're clearly having success, but what has that kind of challenge been like when you can make contact with more pitches than maybe you should be?
Yeah, no, it is definitely, that is something that, as a contact hitter, you got to learn to do. These pitches that, you'll swing at a ball that's like down and away that you'll hit off the end of the bat to the first baseman, and you're like, or the pitcher, and you're like, man, if I just would have swung and missed there, then I could have an extra couple pitches to go up there and really just having at bat, So for me, it's starting to learn that it's okay to swing and miss, in certain situations, and just not being able to, a 2-0 count, if they throw a slider and you swing and miss by 4 feet, like, so what? At least you didn't, hit off the end of the bat to the first base or chop it back to the pitcher. It's okay to swing and miss in certain spots, and then obviously the 2 strikes, kind of just fouling everything off and just waiting for a pitch to, put in play. But no, like you said, I think we just played against Steven last week, and he goes up there and he hits everything, and it's super impressive to kind of be on the other side of the field and watch it. And he's just obviously a great hitter and a contact guy, like you said. And, that's definitely, something as a contact hitter, you got to be able to lay off those pitches that are, out of the zone and not kind of, hit them softly and play.
Right. But at the same time, I imagine you don't want to lose that aggression that makes you special and be a
Yes.
player you're not. I want to ask you quickly about your dad. Obviously, you grew up around the game and you were in the big league world at an age that a lot of people weren't. But what's been maybe surprising or different than you expected about actually living the life that I'm sure you dreamed of for a very long time?
Yeah, no, I definitely I had the, privilege of being able to watch my dad for the first 10 years of my life, and just kind of living in a baseball stadium, and, in clubhouses growing up. So as a fan, it's definitely a lot different than as a player. As a fan, you kind of look around, you see the big stadium, the big lights, and obviously the big crowds, and then it's that's something that I always thought like you would recognize as a player. Then when I first started playing in the big leagues last year, and then going into this year, like obviously it's awesome to play in front of these crowds, but you really don't kind of recognize it too much because you're so focused on the game. Like you're so focused and locked in on each and every pitch, where it's like you don't really see the whole environment that you do as a fan, in the stands. So I think that main difference is you just go out there. It's still baseball. It's just like playing back in college baseball. It's the same, obviously the same dimensions. It's the same game, obviously just a little bit more difficult. But that it is cool sometimes to look out there, like right now, and you're in a big league stadium. But like once it's game time, you're locked in every pitch, and you don't really recognize too much of it.
So let's finish with something a little more timely. We have the All-Star game coming up. You have been leading in the voting, which is astounding and well-deserved. But again, coming into the season, if I said, yeah, you're going to have more votes than Bobby Witt Jr., I think you might be a little bit surprised by that. But, your dad was an All-Star back in 2004. If you do get that opportunity, what are you looking forward to about that?
Yeah, no, it's obviously, a blessing for me for sure to be able to, go out there and obviously just play the game in general. Something that I've always wanted to do is go out there and play this game. And, just be able to, have the privilege of being able to, meet all these shortstops that I've been able to play against. Like I played against Bobby Witt, played against Jeremy Pena, Bo Bichette, like all these guys that, JP Crawford in Seattle, all these guys you play shortstop against, and you get to talk to them and you get to kind of pick their brains. And, it's all been super cool conversations. Something that's crazy for me, being a young guy, I've been watching Bobby Witt since high school, and just being able to now play against him in the big leagues and talk to him, it's super awesome, for me to, be able to meet him and be able to play on the same field as him. But, it's been great so far. I try not to think about, it coming off, and just going out there every day and just enjoying this game with my teammates, being able to put on a big league jersey every day and take the field with my team here has been awesome for me. I've enjoyed every bit of it. I love this team, love being a part of it, and just going out there every day and just playing the game I love.
Jacob, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate the time. We hope to see you in Atlanta, and keep making contact, baby.
Thank
Hate those
you guys
strikeouts.
so much. Thank you guys. I appreciate you having me on.